The sun is blazing over the dusty fields of ancient Olympia. Bare feet pound the earth. The crowd is roaring, and somewhere above, the gods are said to be watching. But this isn't a battlefield. It's something different. A gathering for a sacred event that brings people together. Not to fight, but to challenge themselves, to celebrate life, and to honor the divine. You're witnessing the very first Olympic Games in history. But have you ever wondered how this tradition began? Why would someone risk everything, not for gold or riches, but for a simple crown of olive leaves? And what made these games so powerful that they shaped the world we know today? Let's travel back to ancient Greece, a place where myth and reality often walked side by side. Here, stories were more than just tales. They explained the world and inspired people to greatness. The Olympic Games were born at the crossroads of legend and history, in a time when people believed that to compete was to honor the gods and maybe even touch immortality. Here's something fascinating. In these first games, there were no medals or trophies. The prize was a wreath made from wild olive branches. It might sound simple, but back then, this was a symbol of eternal glory. For the athletes, winning meant becoming a legend, remembered for generations. And did you know that the games were so important that all wars across Greece would stop? Even cities that were bitter enemies would agree to a sacred truce, just so everyone could travel safely to Olympia. As we dive into this story, think about what drove these men. Was it pride? Was it faith? Or was it the hope of being remembered forever? If you love history as much as we do, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel Legacy of Empires, so you can keep exploring the wonders of the ancient world with us. Let's step into the dust of Olympia and discover where it all began. Picture this. It's 776 years before Christ, and something extraordinary is about to happen in a small valley in ancient Greece. But here's the thing about the Olympic Games. Their true beginning isn't found in any history book. It's wrapped up in stories so incredible they blur the line between myth and reality. The ancient Greeks themselves couldn't agree on how it all started. Some whispered that mighty Heracles, fresh from completing his 12 impossible labors, founded the games as a way to honor his father Zeus. Can you imagine? This legendary hero, still covered in the dust of his adventures, deciding that the best way to celebrate would be to gather athletes from across the Greek world for competition. But there's another version that's equally captivating. This one tells of a brutal war between rival city-states that had torn the region apart. After years of bloodshed, exhausted warriors supposedly agreed to settle their differences, not with swords, but with athletic contests. The fastest runner would claim victory for his people. It's a beautiful idea, isn't it? Trading warfare for sport, choosing sweat over blood. Now, whether Heracles actually walked those ancient grounds or whether that legendary race really happened, we may never know for certain. But what we do know is that something magical occurred in Olympia that year. The Greeks didn't just create a sporting event, they forged something sacred. Think about it for a moment. These weren't just games where people showed up to watch fast runners or strong wrestlers. Every 4 years, as summer reached its peak, representatives from city-states that spent the rest of their time plotting against each other would converge on this holy site. They came not just as athletes, but as pilgrims. They came to honor Zeus, the king of all gods, in the most spectacular way they could imagine. And here's what makes it even more remarkable. The winners of these sacred contests didn't receive golden trophies or precious jewels. They didn't get money or land or titles. Instead, they received something that the Greeks considered far more valuable: a simple crown woven from olive leaves. These weren't just any olive branches, mind you. They came from a sacred tree that supposedly grew from a cutting that Heracles himself had brought from the distant lands of the Hyperboreans. To us, it might seem like nothing more than leaves, but to an ancient Greek athlete, that olive crown represented something beyond material wealth. It was a symbol of immortality, a promise that their name would echo through eternity. Long after their bodies had turned to dust, people would still speak of their victory at Olympia. They would become legends, their stories passed down from father to son, from teacher to student, for generations to come. This is what made the ancient Olympics so different from anything we know today. It wasn't about breaking records or earning endorsement deals. It was about achieving something timeless, about proving that a mortal human being could, for one shining moment, approach the realm of the gods themselves. The beautiful irony is that those ancient athletes got exactly what they were seeking. 28 centuries later, we're still telling their stories, still marveling at their dedication and courage. In a way, those simple olive crowns delivered on their promise of immortality far better than any golden medal ever could. Picture this: dusty roads stretching across ancient Greece, filled with travelers from every corner of the known world. Athenians walking alongside Spartans, sworn enemies setting aside their hatred for something greater. This wasn't just any journey. This was the pilgrimage to Olympia, where mortals would gather to honor Zeus himself. For nearly 12 centuries, from 776 before Christ until the 4th century after Christ, athletes made this sacred journey. But here's what's truly remarkable. These weren't just sporting events. The Olympic Games were the most important religious festival in all of Greece, a time when the entire Greek world came together as one. Imagine the scene as you approached Olympia. The sacred grove stretched before you, filled with temples, altars, and monuments that took your breath away. At the heart of it all stood the Temple of Zeus, housing one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, a massive gold and ivory statue of the King of Gods himself. The statue was so magnificent that people said if Zeus ever stood up, his head would go straight through the temple roof. But the most incredible thing about the Olympics wasn't the grandeur. It was the peace. When the sacred heralds announced the games, something magical happened across Greece. Wars stopped. Armies laid down their weapons. The Olympic Truce, or ekecheiria, as the Greeks called it, created a bubble of peace that lasted for months. Think about how extraordinary this was. These were people who lived and breathed conflict. City-states that had been slaughtering each other for generations suddenly opened their borders and guaranteed safe passage to anyone traveling to the Games. A Spartan warrior could walk through Athenian territory without fear, and an Athenian merchant could travel through Spartan lands in complete safety. The truce wasn't just about getting to Olympia safely. It was about something deeper. The Greeks believed that during the Olympics, they weren't just competing against each other, they were performing for the gods. Zeus was watching, and you couldn't honor him properly while blood was being spilled across his sacred land. And here's where things get really interesting. The games were absolutely forbidden to women. Not just competing, but even watching. If a married woman was caught at the stadium, the punishment was death. They would literally throw her off a cliff called Mount Typeon. Only one woman had permission to attend, the priestess of Demeter, goddess of harvest, who had her own special marble throne with the best view in the house. But the women of ancient Greece weren't about to be completely left out. They created their own games called the Heraia, dedicated to Zeus's wife, Hera. These games happened in the same stadium, but the women ran a shorter distance, about 5/6 of the men's track. The winners received olive crowns and portions of a cow sacrificed to Hera, plus the right to dedicate statues with their names on them. The atmosphere during Olympic season was unlike anything you can imagine today. Picture 50,000 people crammed into a valley with no hotels, no restaurants, no modern conveniences. People slept in tents, under the stars, or just out in the open. The heat was brutal, the dust was everywhere, and the smell, well, let's just say 50,000 people without modern sanitation made for quite an aromatic experience. Yet none of that mattered. Rich and poor, slave and free, all came together in this temporary city that sprang up every 4 years. Philosophers gave lectures, poets recited their latest works, and merchants hawked everything from food to souvenirs. The great historian Herodotus first shared his histories at the Olympics. It was like a massive cultural festival wrapped around athletic competition. The religious ceremonies were as important as the sports themselves. Before any competition began, athletes and judges would take sacred oaths at the altar of Zeus Horkios, Zeus the Oath Keeper. They swore to compete fairly and follow all the rules. Judges swore to be impartial and keep all deliberations secret. Then came the great sacrifice. 100 oxen offered to Zeus on the third day of the festival. The smoke from the altar was said to be so thick it could be seen for miles. Athletes believed that competing immediately after this sacrifice gave them a direct connection to divine power. What made Olympia truly special wasn't just the competition or even the religious significance. It was this incredible idea that for a few precious days, all of Greece could remember what united them rather than what divided them. In a world torn apart by constant warfare, the Olympics created a space where being Greek mattered more than being Athenian or Spartan or Theban. When the games ended and everyone returned home, they carried with them not just memories of incredible athletic feats, but something more profound, proof that peace was possible, that their shared culture was stronger than their differences, and that mortals could indeed touch the divine through excellence and dedication. This sacred truce, this temporary unity, this celebration of human potential in honor of the gods. This was the true splendor of Olympia. It wasn't just a sporting event. It was a glimpse of what humanity could achieve when it chose cooperation over conflict, excellence over mediocrity, and the sacred over the mundane. Are you interested in this ancient story? Then leave a comment, click like, share with other history lovers, and subscribe to Legacy of Empires so you don't miss our next journey through the past. Picture the starting line at ancient Olympia. No fancy uniforms, no corporate logos, no million-dollar endorsement deals. Just men standing naked in the Mediterranean sun, their bodies glistening with olive oil, ready to push themselves to the very limits of human endurance. This was competition in its purest form. No barriers between athlete and achievement, no distractions from the pursuit of excellence. The nudity wasn't about shock value or some ancient form of exhibitionism. The Greeks believed the human body was a work of art, a reflection of divine perfection. Competing naked honored the gods by displaying their finest creation without shame or concealment. Plus, there was a practical side. No clothing meant no advantage gained from better gear, and no way to hide weapons or cheat. The Olympic program grew over time, but let's start with the original event that launched it all, the stadion race. Picture a single sprint down a straight track about 200 meters long. That's it. No curves, no lanes, just pure speed over sacred ground. The winner of this race had the entire Olympic festival named after him, becoming the most famous man in Greece for the next 4 years. But as the games evolved, so did the challenges. The Diaolos was essentially 2 stadion races back-to-back. Sprint to the end, touch the post, sprint back. Then came the Dolichos, a grueling long-distance race that could be anywhere from 7 to 24 laps, depending on the local official's mood. Imagine running mile after mile in bare feet on a track that was nothing more than packed earth under a blazing sun. The pentathlon tested every aspect of an athlete's abilities: running, jumping, discus throwing, javelin hurling, and wrestling. You had to be good at everything, not just exceptional at one thing. The long jump was particularly fascinating because athletes carried weights called halteres, stone or metal dumbbells that they swung forward during takeoff and backward during landing to increase their distance. Some ancient jump records suggest athletes were covering distances that seem almost impossible today. Discus throwing required not just strength, but perfect technique. The discus itself was made of bronze or iron and could weigh up to 4.5 pounds. Athletes spent years perfecting their form, turning their entire body into a coiled spring that would unleash explosive power at just the right moment. The javelin event used real spears, the same weapons these men might carry into battle. But here's the thing that might surprise you. They threw for accuracy as much as distance. Sometimes there were targets to hit, making it as much about precision as raw power. Wrestling was where things got really intense. No time limits, no rounds, no breaks. You fought until someone gave up or couldn't continue. Wrestlers were legendary for their conditioning. They trained by grappling with bulls, lifting massive stones, and practicing holds until their bodies were like sculpted marble. But if you want to talk about the most brutal event, nothing compared to pankration. Imagine mixing wrestling, boxing, and martial arts into one devastating competition where almost anything goes. You could punch, kick, choke, throw, and apply joint locks. Only two things were forbidden: biting and gouging out eyes. Everything else was fair game. Pankration matches could go on for hours. Men would emerge bloodied, bruised, sometimes with broken bones, but still fighting because surrender meant eternal shame. There are stories of athletes continuing to fight with dislocated shoulders, broken ribs, and wounds that would send modern fighters straight to the hospital. The most legendary story involves a pankration fighter named Aerodynamics. In his final match, his opponent had him in a chokehold that was slowly killing him. But as Aerodynamics was losing consciousness, he managed to grab his opponent's foot and twist it so violently that the man screamed in agony and surrendered. The crowd erupted in celebration, but when they rushed to congratulate Aerodynamics, they found him dead. He had won his final victory even as he died from the chokehold. The judges awarded him the victory posthumously, and his body received the olive crown. Boxing was equally brutal, but in a different way. Forget padded gloves. Ancient boxers wrapped their hands in leather straps called himantes that were designed to inflict maximum damage. Later versions had metal studs and spikes. Matches had no rounds, no referee stops for cuts, no weight classes. You fought until one person couldn't continue. Then there was the chariot race, the most expensive and dangerous event of all. Only the wealthy could afford to compete because you needed not just a chariot, but a team of 4 perfectly trained horses. The race was 12 laps around the hippodrome, and crashes were not just common, they were expected. Horses would collide, chariots would flip, drivers would be thrown and trampled. Sometimes only a handful of the 40 starting chariots would finish. But here's what made these ancient athletes truly extraordinary: their training methods. Take Milo of Croton, the most famous wrestler in Olympic history. This man won the wrestling competition 6 times over 24 years, an absolutely incredible feat. His secret? He reportedly started as a boy by carrying a newborn calf on his shoulders every day. As the calf grew into a bull, Milo's strength grew with it. By the time he was a man, he could carry a full-grown bull across the stadium. Whether that story is literally true or not, it captures something important about ancient training. These athletes didn't have modern gyms or scientific nutrition plans. They used creativity, determination, and whatever was available. Milo was also famous for his eating. He supposedly consumed 20 pounds of meat, 20 pounds of bread, and 18 pints of wine every day. The athletes who competed at Olympia weren't just physically tough, they were mentally unbreakable. They trained for years, often decades, for a chance at Olympic glory that might last only minutes. Many never made it to the games at all. Others competed multiple times and never won. But they kept coming back because victory at Olympia meant something no amount of money could buy: immortal fame. When an Olympic victor returned to his home city, he was treated like a god. Statues were erected in his honor. Poets wrote songs about his achievements, and his name would be remembered for generations. Some cities even knocked holes in their walls for the victor to enter, symbolizing that a city with such a champion needed no defenses. This was competition stripped down to its essence, human beings pushing themselves beyond what seemed possible, not for money or fame, but for the pure glory of being the best. In a world where most people struggled just to survive, these athletes represented the highest potential of human achievement. They showed that mortals could indeed touch the divine through dedication, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. Picture this. It's the summer of 776 before Christ, and after 5 days of the most intense competition the ancient world has ever seen, dust settles over the sacred grounds of Olympia. The crowds slowly disperse, but something magical lingers in the air. Athletes who arrived as strangers from distant city-states now embrace as brothers, their rivalry transformed into mutual respect through shared struggle. The victors don't hold up golden trophies or pose for painted portraits. Instead, they wear simple crowns woven from olive branches, their faces glowing not just from exhaustion, but from something deeper. They've touched immortality. Their names will be carved in stone, sung by poets, and whispered by children for generations to come. This wasn't just about winning a race or throwing a discus the furthest. This was about proving that mortals could, for brief moments, rival the gods themselves. But here's what strikes me most about these ancient competitors. They weren't chasing money, endorsement deals, or fame in the way we understand it today. They pursued something far more precious and elusive. They wanted their stories to outlive their bodies, to become part of the eternal tapestry of human achievement. When Milo of Croton lifted that fully grown bull above his head after years of training with it as a calf, he wasn't just showing off his strength. He was proving that human dedication could transform the impossible into reality. The sacred truce that halted wars across Greece during these games reveals something profound about human nature. Imagine that. Sworn enemies laying down their weapons, not because they were forced to, but because they recognized something greater than their conflicts. For those precious weeks, the pursuit of excellence mattered more than territorial disputes or political grudges. Soldiers became spectators, generals became fans, and everyone remembered what they shared rather than what divided them. Now, fast forward over 2,000 years to our modern Olympics. Athletes still push their bodies to incredible limits, still dream of standing atop that podium, still feel their hearts racing as they represent their nations. The human drive for excellence hasn't changed one bit, but somewhere along the way, we've added layers that the ancients never imagined. Corporate sponsorships, television contracts, performance-enhancing drug scandals, and political boycotts. Don't get me wrong. Modern Olympic athletes are absolutely incredible, and the Games still create magical moments that unite the world. Remember when the entire stadium held its breath as a gymnast nailed a perfect routine, or when an underdog runner crossed the finish line against all odds? Those moments tap into the exact same human spirit that moved those ancient Greeks 28 centuries ago. But I can't help wondering, in our quest to make the Olympics bigger, faster, and more profitable, have we lost some of that original purity? Those ancient athletes competed naked, literally stripped of everything except their natural abilities. Today's athletes are draped in sponsor logos and high-tech gear that costs more than most people's cars. The olive wreath has been replaced by gold medals worth thousands of dollars, and the simple joy of competition sometimes gets overshadowed by national medal counts and commercial breaks. Yet maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. The ancient Olympics, for all their spiritual beauty, excluded women, slaves, and non-Greeks. Our modern games, despite their commercial complexities, welcome athletes from every corner of the globe, regardless of gender, race, or economic background. We've traded some purity for inclusivity, and perhaps that's a worthy exchange. The real magic happens when we look beyond the differences and see the constants. Whether it's an ancient Greek sprinter bursting from the starting line or a modern swimmer touching the wall by mere hundredths of a second, the human heart beats the same way. The desire to test our limits, to see how fast, how high, how far we can go, that's timeless. Those ancient competitors understood something we sometimes forget in our modern world. True victory isn't just about crossing the finish line first. It's about the journey that gets you there, the character you build through training, and the respect you earn from your rivals. When an ancient athlete dedicated 4 years of his life to preparing for a single event, he wasn't just training his body, he was forging his soul. So what does this ancient tradition tell us about ourselves today? Maybe it reminds us that some things should remain sacred, even in our commercialized world. Maybe it shows us that healthy competition can bring out the best in humanity, turning potential enemies into friends. Or maybe it simply proves that deep down, we all want to be part of something greater than ourselves, something that will outlast our brief time on Earth. The next time you watch an Olympic race, take a moment to imagine those ancient crowds cheering in Olympia. Listen for the echo of bare feet pounding dirt tracks, the sound of bodies pushing beyond their limits, the collective gasp of thousands witnessing human excellence. In that moment, you'll realize that some things never change. The equipment evolves, the rules get updated, and the ceremonies become more elaborate, but the beating heart of competition remains exactly the same. Those ancient Greeks gave us more than just the Olympic Games. They gave us a mirror to see ourselves clearly. Our capacity for greatness, our hunger for meaning, and our endless ability to transform individual achievement into shared inspiration. And perhaps in our modern world of instant everything and disposable fame, that's exactly the kind of timeless wisdom we need to remember. What do you think this story tells us about our own world? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like the video, share it, and subscribe to Legacy of Empires for more legends, truths, and secrets from the ancient world.